Why does Russia keep losing its Su-34's? Russia's Su-34's aren't as great as they think they are. Russia built the Su-34 for exactly this type of war, not a counterinsurgency, not Syria, a high-intensity, state-on-state fight against a peer military with layered air defenses. And yet the Su-34 has become the most destroyed Russian combat aircraft of the entire war. That's the paradox. This was not an obsolete jet dragged out of storage, but an aircraft Moscow openly described as the backbone of its tactical air power, and one it fully expected to carry the weight of the war. So the real question isn't why Ukraine keeps shooting them down, it's why Russia keeps putting them in positions where they can be shot down at all. Hey friends, Wes here, veteran, law grad, international relations degree, all the things, and on paper the Su-34 fullback looks formidable. Twin engines, long range, heavy payload, a side-by-side cockpit designed for long missions, built to replace older Soviet bombers while surviving modern air defenses. This was not meant to be a disposable aircraft. It was meant to be Russia's answer to sustained strike warfare. In Russian doctrine, the Su-34 was the aircraft meant to be flown daily, the platform that sustained pressure along the front, and the tool that shaped battlefield conditions through constant presence rather than occasional spectacle. And that's where the trouble begins, because Ukraine didn't fight the war Russia planned. The Russian campaign plan centered on speed and shock, with the expectation that rapid pressure would produce systemic collapse. Before Ukraine could meaningfully respond, Russian planners expected Ukrainian air defenses to collapse quickly, assumed command and control networks would fracture under pressure, and believed their strike aircraft would operate with relative freedom once the opening phase of the invasion concluded. Ukraine did the opposite. Instead of chasing air superiority, Ukraine built air denial, layered systems, dispersed sensors, mobile launchers, ambush logic. The goal wasn't to dominate the sky, it was to make the sky hostile. And that environment is lethal to aircraft like the Su-34, especially when they're asked to do too much, too often, too close to the front. The Su-34's losses aren't about pilot incompetence, although Russia's flight hours for training have been drastically reduced. Also, they're not about bad luck, they are about role mismatch. Russia continues to rely on the Su-34 as a multi-role workhorse, often pushing the aircraft far beyond what its original designers intended. In practice, it serves as a frontline bomber tasked with delivering unguided and guided munitions close to the line of contact. It has also become a glide bomb truck lobbing standoff weapons from predictable launch points in an attempt to reduce exposure while still maintaining pressure on Ukrainian positions. At the same time, the Su-34 is routinely used as a substitute for missing or degraded intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capability. Instead of operating with robust airborne ISR coverage, Russian planners have leaned on crude strike aircraft to identify targets in real time, forcing these jets closer to the battlefield than is doctrinally sound. That's what happens when you don't have the AWACS, folks. In some cases, the aircraft has even been pressed into a form of improvised close air support, flying lower and slower than intended to compensate for poor coordination and limited situational awareness on the ground. These mission profiles come with consequences. Repeated use in the same roles pushes Su-34s into predictable flight corridors and operating altitudes that Ukrainian forces have had years to study. Patterns emerge, launch points become known, escape routes become anticipated. That predictability exposes the aircraft to layered threats across the battle space. Medium-range surface-to-air missile systems can engage them as they approach release zones. Short-range air defenses cover the gaps closer to the front. Man-portable air defense systems wait for the moments when altitude and speed drop just enough to create a firing window. Increasingly, Russian crews also face the risk of interception by Ukrainian fighters operating with targeting data supplied by Western sensors, like Ukraine's F-16s using Link 16. This extends the kill chain well beyond what Moscow originally planned for. The Su-34 is not failing because it is poorly designed. It is failing because it is being asked to do too much, too often, in an environment that punishes repetition and rewards adaptation. Ukraine doesn't need to shoot down every Su-34, it just needs to make every sortie expensive. and it has. At the start of the war, Russia had roughly 140 Su-34's. Confirmed losses now sit around 25% of that fleet, and that's the conservative count. Now, production has increased. Yes, Russia is building Su-34Ms faster than before. But here's the problem. Modern air power isn't just airframes. The problems facing Russia's fallback fleet is not limited to airframe losses alone. Each destroyed aircraft represents a much deeper erosion of combat power that cannot be replaced quickly or cheaply. The most immediate loss is the trained crews. Su-34 pilots and weapons systems officers require years of training, simulator time, and operational seasoning before they become effective in combat. And those losses compound faster than new crews can be produced. Beyond personnel, attrition steadily eats away at maintenance depth. Keeping a high-tempo strike aircraft flying requires skilled technicians, specialized tooling, and a steady flow of consumables. As losses begin to mount, maintenance units are forced to cannibalize airframes, stretching already thin support structures and reducing overall fleet readiness. Spare parts present an even more stubborn problem. Sanctions have choked access to critical components, forcing Russian industry to rely on limited domestic substitutes or imports routed through third countries. This slows repair cycles and reduces the number of aircraft available for sustained operations. Even when replacement airframes roll off production lines, survivability upgrades, which should be introduced gradually and systematically, are instead applied unevenly. Electronic warfare suites, defensive countermeasures, and sensor improvements arrive in small batches, often too late to meaningfully change loss rates across the fleet. The result is a force where some aircraft are marginally more protected, while others remain dangerously exposed. And then there is time, the one resource Russia cannot manufacture. Training pipelines, industrial capacity, doctrinal adaptation all move slower than the battlefield demands. Ukraine's defenses evolve in weeks. Russian recovery efforts unfold over years. That imbalance ensures that every Su-34 loss carries consequences far beyond the single aircraft that fails to return home. Ukraine is destroying aircraft faster than Russia can regenerate combat-ready squadrons. That's an attrition trap, and Russia walked into it willingly. Russia responded the only way it could. Glide bombs, longer standoff distances, reduced exposure. That adaptation worked tactically, but strategically, it's a concession. It admits the Su-34 cannot safely operate where it was meant to dominate. Worse, glide bombs trade accuracy for distance. They require predictable launch profiles. They still depend on aircraft surviving the launch. Ukraine adapts faster. Air defenses reposition, fighters hunt the launch baskets, drones strike the airfields themselves, which brings us to the most important shift of the war. Ukraine doesn't just shoot down Su-34's anymore. It destroys them on the ground. Deep strike drones, sabotage operations, airfield attacks, and hundreds and sometimes thousands of kilometers from the front. That changes everything because every destroyed Su-34 on the ground is a lost pilot rotation, a lost maintenance cycle, and a lost sortie surge. Russia's air force isn't losing dogfights, it's losing resilience. When a Ukrainian F-16 reportedly downed an Su-34, the story wasn't about Western jets beating Russian jets. It was about integration. Ukraine is learning to fuse sensors, cue fighters, and exploit Russian predictability. Russia stayed silent because silence is easier than explaining why your premier bomber keeps flying into traps. Ukraine isn't winning because it has better platforms. It's winning because it adapts faster. Poland traded old jets to buy into Ukraine's drone future. Russia keeps trading aircraft for temporary battlefield pressure. One side invests in systems, the other burns through inventory. The Su-34 isn't a bad aircraft. That's the uncomfortable truth. It's a capable jet trapped inside a failing doctrine. Russia built a bomber for a war of control. Ukraine turned the war into one of denial. And denial eats these jets alive. The fullback was supposed to be the backbone of Russian air power. Instead, it has become a case study in what happens when adaptation lags behind reality. And until Russia changes how it fights, the Su-34 will keep doing exactly what it's been doing all war. Flying, getting targeted, and not coming back. That's it for today, my friends. The best free way to help me push back on Russian disinformation is to hit that funky subscribe button. AI has essentially supercharged Russia's disinformation machine, showing realistic-looking videos of Ukrainian troops surrendering in the east and other nonsense. We need more voices speaking the truth about Putin's naked ambition. And, as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.